Black History Media
Podcast.
Welcome to Black History Mini Docs Podcast, an extension of our BHMD social media website, where under 2 minutes you can immerse yourself in Black history with factual, accurate videos about historical events and Black people who have helped shape American history. I'm Bonita Brisker, affectionately known as Busy Bee, actress, singer, writer, director, producer, and co-founder of AgriSmart Inc. Today is a very special broadcast, and I know I always say that today is a very special broadcast because it is, and they always have been. Each one has its own unique specialness that makes it all better for the collective. So here we go again. But first, let me take a quick moment to thank the curator and the executive producer of BHMD, our very own Nima Barnett, award-winning television film director and producer, and her husband, Reed R. McCants, also an award-winning actor, director, producer who created BHMD. Thank you, Nima and Reed, paying homage to a dynamic duo for producing hundreds of episodes of Black History Mini Docs and edutaining our youth and reminding us all, young and old, me old, of our great legacy and the contributions that African Americans have made throughout history. I am just so fortunate to be able to interview people that I admire and I adore. Today, our very special guest is a scholar, Professor Emerita Vera J. Katz. Vera Katz is a legendary acting and directing professor, having taught both acting and theater at Howard University for over 32 years. For over 60 years, Professor Katz has been a prominent voice in the world of arts and entertainment. Her groundbreaking techniques have worked to shape the careers of many of today's brightest stars, from Broadway to Hollywood. To name a few from an esteemed list: Debbie Allen, Felicia Rashad, Lynn Whitfield, Isaiah Washington, Anthony Anderson, Taraji P. Henson, and the beloved Chadwick Boseman, who's gone but not forgotten. The list goes on for the many lives she's touched and changed in their respective fields. Vera's teachings have literally crossed borders. She's taught numerous master classes and workshops, both nationally and internationally, too many to list. She resides in the nation's capital and has taught over 20 years at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Also, the Woolly Mammoth Theater Company, the African Continuum Theater Coalition, and she still teaches a masterclass workshop coaching actors for performances at the upcoming National Black Theater Festival in Winston-Salem. Vera still prepares actors for auditions and performances on camera. It is an honor and a privilege to present Professor Vera J. Katz. Vera, my heart is so full. I am still wound up from attending your 86th birthday bash and your book launch party at Howard University just last week. Congratulations, Vera. You are amazing. Vera, how was it seeing all of your former students who came from near and far to honor you?
I was so proud, Bonita, to see what they're doing. And even the ones who aren't doing theater, they're doing something with what they learned at Howard. They're leading groups. They founded companies. They're in their business endeavors. They told me they're using their directing skills. I was so happy to see where they've grown to, and it meant a lot to me. Many of them came from different states, and it was such a wonderful reunion to see them and to feel that they're out there in the world and they're making a contribution, and they're giving back, and they're affecting younger people. Brian Chandler told me, and I taught him in the 70s, that he started teaching at Ohio University. And I was so excited about that because I've always wanted him to do something in theater. And his acting career just got stalled But the next thing I knew, he asked me, called me on the phone out of the blue and said, would I write a recommendation letter for him? And I did. And he told me he's at Ohio State now. And I'm so thrilled with that kind of progress.
That's amazing. There were many, many honors given to you by your former students. It was a wonderful event. Lynn Whitfield was
Yes.
there, and she said some wonderful things about you. You were literally verified with proclamations, dedications. You were inducted with an honorary ghetto pass, to say it like you mean it, because your students said it, which you always do. I know you for that.
Yeah.
You speak the truth no matter where you are, how it is, how it sounds. You're going to tell the truth.
Well, if you don't, then people are not going to trust you when you say the work was good. Then they're going to say, well, she just says that all the time, but she doesn't. We don't know what. You need to get people to believe you. You know, in this business, art/business, sometimes there isn't enough honesty. And the very least a good teacher can do is give honesty. So if I say the work was good, then I really mean it, and they know that I really mean it. If I say the work was good, but you might do this or you might do that, they know where I'm coming from. So that's important. You have to be honest. Not brutal, but honest.
Well, I guess brutal is a matter of perspective. We're so sensitive.
Yes, yes.
But it's good, and you've never been brutal, but you could say, as you've said to me, don't use cheap tricks like letting the phone ring all the time. Yeah. And at the moment, because my show opened up with the telephone ringing, it was brutal.
Yeah, it stunned you.
But it was very I changed the
Yes.
opening of the show, and it made it stronger.
Yes.
So it's really important
Right.
to tell the truth. And
We're talking about you playing Billie Holiday, right?
yes, ma'am.
Yes, that was quite wonderful. You were quite wonderful in that. And we did it at the National Black Theater
We did it
Festival.
twice.
And where else did we do it?
We did it at the Public Theater in Cheverly, Maryland, here in Washington,
yes,
D.C.
Yes,
And
yes.
you were wonderful. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I grew as an actor. It was so incredible to come. I was just speaking of our curators, the creator of BHMD, and they're such a dynamic duo.
Yeah.
And when I met you and your husband, Tom,
Yeah.
who was just an incredible virtuoso on the piano,
Right.
and music director there at Howard University.
Right.
When I came to study with you for the first time, and I had the privilege of working with Tom,
Yeah.
I remember going from one room with you, getting all of those nuggets and lessons, and getting, really worked out strongly. And then I went to the back room where Tom worked me out musically. And it was an experience that I had never had in my career.
People always ask me, what do I do when I work with black actors? The thing is, I see your talent and I see your beauty, and that's true of all the other people I've worked with. And when I see talent, it's just very exciting, and it's a nugget. And the person itself doesn't quite know whether they have it or not, but they hope they do, and they believe in themselves. And so what I try to do is pull it out of you. So whether you're black or whether you're white, I just pull out your talent and try to give you the technique to make it shine. And that's what I want to do. I want the talent and the beauty inside of whomever I'm working with to come out. Now, if I don't see the talent, then, I don't work that way. I don't work that hard, and I'm not that excited, and I'm not turned on, as they say. So I saw the talent in you, and I saw the inner depth in you, and so I was so interested in pulling it out of you. I don't work on things that I don't believe in.
That was my next question, because that's really important when someone comes to you to work on a project, something that you may not be very passionate about. And if you think in your mind, this is going to be longer than I expected, what's the alternative?
Well, I used to slosh through. I don't do that anymore. Well, because of my age, I don't have the patience. It doesn't interest me. I work with students since, of course, COVID on Zoom, and I was working with a young lady who has a lead in, and I was trying to teach her beats and how each time you change the subject, you change your energy, and you change your pace, and you change your volume. She said, "This is a lot of hard work." Now, she was a lead in this show. "This is a lot of hard work." And I said, "Well, yes, it is, if you want to be a working actress that lasts, that lasts." And she said, "Oh. And I said, "Well, maybe you want to think about this." And she said, "Yes, I do." And so I said, "All right, good luck to you." So I went and watched the show after that. And she was a girlfriend on the show and a lead. Very pretty. Beautiful makeup application, lovely teeny little waist. But her acting was terrible. And I was glad I was out of it. And she didn't want it.
It's amazing. That's a great story.
Now, she won't last. She'll be the flavor of the moment. And there are so many like that who, think that their size 2 waist and their prettiness will carry them through to where Felicia Rashad is at her age, and I won't mention it, but she's managed to go through decades and decades. Yes. And many other fine actresses.
Because
Meryl
of the
Streep,
hard work.
decades and decades. And it's really about training. What gets me, Benita, is that lay people and often actors don't think that they need training, but to be a dancer you need training, and to play the piano you need training, and why not for acting? Just because they think, well, I can read and I can talk. Well, that's not what acting is. It's more than that. So anyway, that I digressed
I
here.
love that. That's so powerful. A good actor makes it appear that it's easy to do.
Yes.
And it's a lot of hard work involved, a lot of training, long hours of many different techniques.
And understanding people and understanding character. People come to me and say, well, just teach me how to memorize quickly. They think it's to memorize, and I say to them all the time, don't memorize until you understand where it's coming from. Don't memorize immediately, because then you'll be saying it like it's memorized. And I hear people on TV and they sound like they're reading the lines from the script. There's no humanity in it. And when people of color do that, I get more upset. Now, why do I get more upset? Well, because I'm going to digress for a minute. In my lifetime, and I'm in my 80th decade, I've never personally met a person of Asian descent on a personal level.
Really?
I've seen them on TV.
Yes.
I've seen them in film, but I've seen them in the restaurants, wonderful food, but I've never interacted with one. So where do I get my impressions from? Where do I get my understanding of who they are? From film, from television, from reading a book.
From observations in passing, in the restaurants, wherever you have to do the research.
And recently in the elevator in my new place after my husband passed, I met Jason Wang, and I said, thank you, God. And we have a friendship through a little dog, which is how things happen. But my point is that why am I upset when people of color are not doing the work and out there? They are sending an impression to multitudes of people who don't know them. And one has to not only, they don't know them, but you have to counteract the media. You have to counteract the politics. You have to counteract all the films that have come before in the 50s, 60s. It hasn't been that long, in the 70s.
Let me stop you here because, and I'm sorry to interrupt that, but that's so powerful. And it brings me to the question that I really want to ask you. And while please don't forget where you are because you're answering it. And it's an important question. So I want to make sure that we get the full scope of this.
Right.
Because I wanted to talk about your accomplishments, but you're right there on it. I read somewhere, I may have even heard you say this, that one of your greatest accomplishments is touching lives, mostly impacting the lives of African Americans by insisting that we understand the value of our own story. I mean, wow, now that's a broad statement, but explain now, because you were just on the track of this. What do you mean by this? Why is it so important to you as a Jewish woman to impart this virtue on our culture?
Well, as I've said, this is how the larger country gets to know you. That means that you are the carrier of your history and your legends and your stories and your contributions to this country. And you have to carry it in a way that you're a teacher in your own way, that instructs others as to who you are. Just at this event that you said that you loved, I invited 2 of my cousins. I don't have a large family. And most of them are gone. And I invited 2 of my cousins, and they were outside. And my cousin called me the next day, and she said, I had such a good time. She didn't go to the event. She just did the outside.
Oh, the pre-event outdoors,
Yes.
the reception.
And I said, oh, I'm so glad. And then she kept saying over and over, everybody was so nice. Everybody was so friendly. Everybody was so warm. And I finally said, well, what did you think they would be? And she said, well, I just mean, I felt so comfortable. I felt so... And she meant that, and it was a wonderful, and then she said, I want to contribute. How can I contribute? So it brought her to even wanting to contribute. The point I'm making is that was her first connection in not just the tube or the screen or a book or an article in the Washington Post, but real live Black people chatted with her. And she loved it. And she said, this shows the ignorance. I have a phrase in my book called The Limitations of Being White. I wanted to call the book that, but I was dissuaded. And, because then it sounded like a political treatise. But The Limitations of Being White, she said, and they're all such beautifully different colors. And I said, well, think about that. Why do you think that is? The ignorance and the limitation of being white. And she meant well. Yeah. She's a very warm, fuzzy person who hasn't really thought about topics that my life has been steeped in, and your life has been, because you've lived it. Yes. So she said, oh, yes. Oh, Vera, I always learn something from you. And I thought, my goodness, how come you didn't learn that earlier elsewhere? Well, so when they look at the tube and and this is my business, getting people who prepared for a job on screen or on stage. When I took my grandson years ago to see a production of Raisin in the Sun at Arena Stage, and he was in high school senior, and we walked back to the car after. And I said, well, you told me you saw the movie when we came. What did you think of the play? And he said, oh, they were real people up there. I could feel their presence and their breath. I saw real people.
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
He said, that was so much better, Grandma. And he was in high school. And so that's what my cousin experienced.
I think it's so amazing that you have been designated, chosen, or it's a choice you made. I heard, so here's a two-part question to what you just explained to us, why it's important to introduce your culture and tell your stories, your own stories, because you are reaching the masses of people to understand who you are and bringing people together.
Yeah.
And I heard Lynn Whitfield say the other night, and I'm sure you've heard it time and time again, as a professor at an HBCU, when someone comes to you and asks you, how can you tell me about how to be who I am, how to be, me and my culture? How do you answer that?
Well, I'll give you a little story. I was doing a workshop, and a young, talented man, I said, who has a monologue they'd like to do? And a young, talented man who I didn't know got up, and he did a monologue. And it started with, I'm proud to be black. And he said it with anger. I'm proud to be black. And then he went on, I like being black. And he talked about why he liked being black with intensity that was verging on hostility. Now, I know why that was happening, but when he got through, I said, are you really proud to be black? He said, yes. I said, well, what do you like about it? He said, well, I just told you. I said, no, you didn't tell me. You told me that you were angry that other people didn't like you. That's what I heard. Now, could we go back and start with some love and tell me how much you love your people? Now, is that telling him how to be black, or is that just pulling out technique from him? Where is the love in the piece?
Yes.
And intensity is not angry.
I always believe that our culture share similarities in so many ways. Most noted where our cultures had nothing in common with certain groups of other Americans, and we felt the sting of that by means of segregation and discrimination and the effects of it on our cultures, independently, which gives us our common ground to stand on with our relationships. We've always had very deep conversations about our
Yes.
communities and always beautiful conversations, because American Jews played a significant role in our lives, in the founding and funding of our most important organizations, including the NAACP in 1909, and other civil rights leaders to found the NAACP. And I learned this when I wrote my one-woman show titled Benita and Billy, which you just mentioned, because you dramaturged and directed it in the Public Theater in Cheverly and in North Carolina in the Black Theater Festival,
yeah.
Which was originally directed by the amazing Denise Dowse. You also met Denise Dowse. We toured the show for years. But there are a couple of inferences to Jewish people in my show. Billie Holiday's most famous song, Strange Fruit, was written by Abel Meeropol, a Jewish songwriter and poet.
Yeah.
And we had such a wonderful time exploring these things, and I learned these incredible
Yeah.
stories about the connection that we had, which we literally made a personal connection, and I'm so proud of. But a lot of people, we get caught up in the crux of it because people fight over the Jewish culture, whether it's a faith-based religion
Ethnic.
or ethnic, trying to identify with our race and our heritage. But I believe that those are the things that, because we've had those experiences together, you have been able to come, to us, and we just receive it so well, and we respect what you've taught us because you've experienced so much of it yourself.
Well, I respect what your people have done, and the journey and the strength and the determination. I've always respected that, even before I came to Howard. And I've always felt a connection. I wanted to talk a little bit about that the other night because my parents raised me that way. My parents had a lot of respect for black people. And when I was coming up, I was hearing things like that. And you'll read it in the book. Dad was just absolutely an aficionado of Duke Ellington, and he started wearing pocket handkerchiefs and fresh flowers, and they would go and see Duke Ellington, and everybody would say, well, why are you dressing that way? And he'd say, well, the Duke does it. So, and then I would hear these stories. So there was, a respect for your culture and a connection to it. And, America's done a job on both groups. This country, I don't have to tell anybody that, has not been kind to your people nor mine. And somehow we've survived a long period of time. We are even a smaller group than you are in the world, very small. And somehow we've managed to survive. And so we've had that inner determination and that inner strength. And I respect that your people have had it. And I always have. So there was that connection. And there was that understanding of how the hurt by receiving the disregard and the dislike affects your psyche inside, as it does people of color, and as it does for Jewish people. We just handle it differently, but it does. So I understood that, and so I wanted you to be the best you could possibly be, the best that I saw you could be, the best that you were. And I just wanted to pull it out. Now, I was well trained. I had a lot of early experiences. The book will tell you about my Tante Lisa, who studied with Stanislavski back in Russia. I, by virtue of where I came from, I had a lot to give. And I knew that if I gave it to you, you guys could run with it. And that was, I believe that all the time. It would take you somewhere. If people saw your inner beauty and understood who you were, then they'd love you the way I did. And so that was what I had to do. And I believe that I was put there to do that. I believe that coming to Howard was not something I got up and said, well, I'm going to apply to Howard.
Yes. How did you end up
No,
at
that
Howard
was
University?
one of those strange things that God brings you that puts you on a path. You can either say, I don't want this path, or you don't pick it up, But there are little silver stars put in front of us, and we can either pick them up or not.
Why did you pick it up?
Well, I was on a panel. I was an adjudicator for a one-act plays tournament in D.C. at Roosevelt High School. And there was this brilliant lady, and she was on the panel, and her name was Alfredine Brown. She was an actress, African-American, and she had done some movies with Peter Ustinov, and we gave critiques, and we both looked at each other and were impressed with each other in terms of the critiques and her intelligence. And she said, you should be teaching. And I said, well, that's what they told me at graduate school, but I do direct, and so I'm teaching. And she said, do you have a higher degree? And I said, I have a master's. She said, why don't you go down and see my husband? He's chair of the department at Howard University, the theater department, and they're looking for someone. Now, I didn't know the backstory. The book tells me the backstory. The backstory was it was late August. They needed someone to fill the bill. They had just run out another teacher who happened to be my color. I didn't know any of that. But they needed someone in August. So I went down, and he interviewed me, and he said during the interview, well, and what do you know about our heritage? And I said, well, I've known many African Americans in my life, and I've performed with some in graduate school, and, I think I do. But as I said that, I said, you got a lot to learn, kid, as I was saying that. And he said, well, we'll give you a try, and, here are the papers. Well, I went home, Benita, and I started reading and reading. I read slave narratives. I read contemporary plays. At that time, in '69, there weren't too many contemporary black plays. They were all very old-fashioned. Theodore Ward, The Big White Fog. But I read whatever I could read. And then I picked up Frank Snowden's book about blacks in antiquity, and I read that. And then I read the poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar. I said, well, we could work on these. They're beautiful. And then I read Langston Hughes. I said, well, I'll bring them in, and I'll see if we could work on Langston Hughes, because I like them, and they must know Langston Hughes, I figured. And so that's how I entered the classroom, thinking, I know enough about how to teach the theater, but I've got so much more to learn. And I went home every night, and as the book says, reading, researching, realizing. I did that for the first 3 years. Well, at the end of the first year, he said, thank you so much. Goodbye. And that's when I said on stage, I'm not leaving. I like it here. I'm learning. I'm learning a lot. I like it here. And between the work I was doing on myself and the work they were feeding me, and I was figuring out, it was more than theater for me. It was baptism by fire and an education. So that's how, and I came over the years to realize that the big woman upstairs had a hand in dropping me down there. Pick this up or don't, She said, go down and see my husband, Bill Brown. And I did. And then I did my first show there, and I put her in as the lead.
Wow.
Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright. Roxanne Reese was in that piece.
Roxanne Reese, yes, indeed.
And I put Alfredine in that. Yes, I called her up. And since she was the wife of the chair, he was thrilled. I didn't do it for that reason, but then I realized later, that was good, a political move. And so it all configured, it starts to configure when you're on the right road and when you're doing what you should do, what you were born to do, what God wants you to do. It then all starts to shape in ways who could have known.
It absolutely. I think it's all in divine order. You just mentioned Roxanne. I was going to mention Roxanne Reese. I interviewed Roxanne. She was my first interviewer for the podcast. And
she's a wonderful actress.
Wonderful.
And singer.
I met you. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how we met?
No.
I was trying to remember. I can hardly remember either.
Through Roxanne.
It was through, what? It's divine providence.
Mm-hmm. Just all worked out. Well, I always say this. I've been saying for years. God is a playwright. Organized.
Yes.
And,
yes.
Beginning, middle, and end. And there's some sort of structure there that we don't know as we're going through it. We don't know it. But at some point you get a glimpse of the structure, And
he writes
that's, you asked me how I felt earlier about that event and the love the students showed me. And that's what I was thinking. Who knew that this would come to pass? And look how God brought me through whatever the beginnings and the difficulties and what the obstacles, which you're supposed to jump over. You're working hard to do them. So that's the thing. We've got to do the work, and then we'll be set along where we need to go.
Well, you have certainly accomplished a lifelong mission with what you've done and your accomplishments, greatly adored and adorned by our culture. You've always been committed and devoted to preserving and nurturing, the arts in the Black community, and you've done a great service for Black people.
Well, they've done a great service for me too.
It's been a wonderful collaboration, and
yeah,
I'm saying
yes.
that so that we can introduce your beautiful book, because you've
Oh,
journaled
thank you.
it, you've chronicled, you've journaled this amazing story, this amazing love story in a book that's called A Cat's Walk. Let's
Cat's
talk about
Walk.
it.
And the subtitle is A Toolbox of Techniques for Actors and Directors.
Do we have it? Pull it up
Yes,
so people
yes.
can see it.
And the first part of the book is a semi-memoir
Can I hold
of
it?
my life at Howard.
Okay.
And I want to tell you what that means. Why I came to Howard, some of what I told you, and why I stayed, and what I learned, mistakes I made. I made many, Benita. Mistakes that were made about me. What I wanted to achieve while I was there. That's the first part of the book. The second part of the book is technique, technique, technique. Now, to my knowledge, and I don't think I did say that the other night. To my knowledge, there is no other acting book, and there are many good ones, and there are many bad ones, but there are many acting books. To my knowledge, there's no book that uses as reference Black material. Mm-hmm. We always hear a paragraph about Raisin in the Sun, period. Mm-hmm. And in the second half of the book, I use a lot of Black material to show you how to apply the techniques. In the back of the book, I have a bibliography of Black plays, and I say it's a beginning bibliography. Please add to it, because so much is happening since I've written the book. So many playwrights, like the advent of Dominique Morisseau, who's written so many things. So there are things that are missing in that part. Also, there's a glossary of terms used in the book. And also there is a list of active verbs, which is very important to work with, because verbs are what a character is fighting for, to get whatever. And the last thing in the book is a love note to my students.
Oh.
And that was written the other night.
It was beautiful.
Yes.
Lynn read some of that the other night.
Yes, that was on the last
It
page.
touched me so
and then there's a
deeply.
memoriam page of all the wonderful people I've taught who were not with us.
I need to really study
It's
it.
beautiful.
Lots
and
of pictures
The forward by
Fel-
Felicia Rashad.
By Dean Felicia Rashad,
Dean Felicia
right,
Rashad.
who I
That's
taught
right.
when she was Felicia Allen, plain Felicia Allen, not a dean, never plain, but not a dean. So yes, she agreed to do that long time ago for me.
I
And
flipped the pages, and I just did a movie with Wendy Davis.
yes, I wanted to
weeks
say
ago.
something about Wendy Raquel Robinson,
I
who
worked with Wendy
also
Raquel Robinson.
I taught her, and I'm very proud of her. People might know her from The Game.
Yes.
They probably saw her on that, and way back, the Steve Harvey Show. And she runs a marvelous theater company in LA called the Amazing Grace Conservatory.
I did a fundraiser with her
Did
for
you?
that.
Yes. She's wonderful.
She's wonderful.
And as talented as she is, beautiful. So yes, I did
Inside
want to
and out.
say that. She was supposed to come, but she was in the middle of doing a show with the kids
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, you know? That's what my manager said to me. This was cute. My manager said, Vera, when I said, well, who's going to be there? And I would ask her that, and she'd say, Vera, all your students are working. And I'd say, okay, but who's going to be there? And she'd say, they're working, Vera. And I finally got the subtext. And I said, oh, they're working, so they're not coming. And she said, yes. And I said, well, that's good.
Because everybody's working.
Yes, and it had just started to open up from
Yes.
this nasty virus.
Yeah.
And so everybody was busy doing stuff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's good that they're working. Better they should be working.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
We're very proud of you, Vera.
Yeah, well,
I am so proud to be a part of your great legacy. And I just want to say congratulations again on your 8th decade of your beautiful life. We're celebrating your birthday. I want you to, I also want to tell everybody, don't forget that you can pre-order the book at
Vera J, VJK.
VJ Katz. You can
Yes.
pre-order the book, A Cat's Walk, at vjkatz.com. And then that's the soft release that's happening now. And the hard release will be about June 10th on Amazon and all the other social media sites where you can purchase the book.
And it's my hope that you use these techniques and you apply them to your work so that your work will be better. Even if you're already working, there's some things in there that are not Stanislavski, they're pure Katzian. And I'd like you to dip into that, and it may even add to the good work you're already doing.
Awesome. Awesome. Vera, is there anything that you'd like to leave with us? You can leave us anything, a thoughtful word. You can leave us your website, your Cash App for donations, you can leave us.
Well, I guess if we're going to turn this country into what we all know it could be, we have to look at each other. I guess I want white people to know and black people to know and all people to know that old simple adage, don't judge a book by its cover. There is beauty in each one of our skin colors and in each one of our heritages, each one of our religious beliefs. There is beauty, or they wouldn't exist. And I have to say to your people and to my people, we have to do better that way. We have to know that I can have white skin and still care. And you have your beautiful color skin, I want to say that again. You can have your beautiful color skin and have so much to give inside of you. And we all have to recognize that. And that's what I'd like us to remember. I'd like us to do that. There are limitations to being white. And I'd like white people to remember that. And I'd like us to respect each other and what we both have, what we all have.
What we all have to offer each other.
Yes. And this great country. If we want it to be great, that's what we're down to now. That's what we're down to now. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way to close the show. And I'm going to take the baton and spread some love the way you have expressed it to everyone that I meet. And so I'm grateful, Vera.
Thank you. Well, I'm grateful too. Thank you. I enjoy this so much, Benita. I did.
Thank you.
Thank you
Vera.
for wanting to do it and putting me on your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting. We are very excited to air this, and I'll give you all of the information
Later.
Yeah, so that's a perfect way to close out. This has been a Black History Mini Docs podcast with the fabulous Professor Vera J. Katz. So we'd love to hear from you. And please look for more exciting episodes to come. Please subscribe to BHMD, hit like, share, and leave us your comments with whatever is on your mind. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Bonita Brisker. Take a break to create a very empowering moment in time. Be strong, be well, and be kind, as Vera said.
Black History Mini Docs Podcast.
Turn on notifications. Now that you finished that, watch another.